John wants to measure the height of a tree. He walks exactly 100 feet from the base of the tree and looks up. The angle of elevation, the angle from the ground to the top of the tree is 133. All right, so we have our triangle. And it says the angle, so the ground is down here, right? This is where my grass is. Okay, so that's the ground. So it says 100 feet from the base. So John is right here. He's 100 feet away. The angle with the ground is 33. And we're trying to find the height, which is x. So the first thing you have to figure out is what trig ratio is going to get us there. So label your three sides of your triangle using the 33 degree as your reference, where it's opposite, adjacent, and the hypotenuse. Anybody need a calculator? Everybody got one? All right, who used sine? Raise your hand if you use sine. Who used cosine? Who used tangent? I agree with tangent. Let's go ahead and label it. So x is opposite. So if this is 33, x is opposite. 100 is adjacent. And this here, this diagonal would be my hypotenuse. We don't know that. So we're going to do a tangent. So we're going to set it up. Tangent of 33 degrees equals, it has to be opposite over adjacent. Let's cross multiply it. And that will give you x equals 100 times the tangent of 33. Type that in your calculator. And 100 times tangent of 33 is 64.941 feet. That would be my answer. Any questions about our bell work? All right, go to page 9 in your notes. Page 9 in your notes. So we're going to talk about the law of sines. All right, two things to know about the law of sines. In order to use the law of sines, you have to have an angle side pair. So that means you have to know big A or little a, big B, little b, big C, little c. Now, everything we did in 8.1 with sine, cosine, tangent, that has to be a right angle with a 90 degree angle. But law of sines can be any kind of triangle. It could be an acute, where all the angles are less than 90. It could be obtuse, where one angle is bigger than 90. Or it could also be a right triangle, but it's not limited to a right triangle. Now, I think this formula is a little confusing, but when you set it up, you're only going to have two fractions. So it would either be, for example, either we would take that out and you would have sine A over A equals sine B over B, or we would take this out and that would give us sine B over B equals sine C over C, or we would take out the middle. But we're not going to use all three. The main thing to keep in mind is that when you set it up, each fraction has to have a pair. If it's big A, this has to be little a. If this is big B, it has to be little b. That's what I mean by you have to have a pair. All right, so let's get started. Example 1. So we got our triangle SRT. Let's go ahead and draw it out. Triangle SRT. Remember, angles are inside. So both of these are angles, which means that these are inside. Sides are on the outside. So big S is 51. Big R is 63. And little r is 13. And we need to solve the triangle, which means I need to find big T, little t, and little s. That's what I need to find. All right, so let's go ahead and find big T. In order to find the measure of angle T, we're going to use triangle sum. 180 minus 63 minus 51. Go ahead and pick up your calculators and see what you get. All right, did you get 66? All right, so that's big T. Okay. Do we have a pair? In other words, do I have an angle and the opposite side? So do I have an angle where I know the opposite side? Yes, because we know big R and we know little r. So that's what I'm going to use to set up my proportion. So I'm going to set it up. The sine of big R over little r is going to equal, and depending on what we find next, I'm going to find T next. No, I'm going to find S. It would be the sine of big S over little s. That's what I mean when I say you only need to use two. All right, so I'm going to set it up. Sine 63 over 13 equals the sine of 51 over little s. So when I cross multiply this direction, that would be s times the sine of 63 equals, and then you go this direction, 13 times the sine of 51. In order to solve for little s, we have to divide by the sine of 63. So go ahead and type that in your calculator. 13 sine 51 divided by the sine of 63. All right, so I got 11.339. Did anyone else get that for little s? 11.339. All right, now to find little t, I'm going to stick with the sign of r over r. But now I'm going to set it equal to the sign of big T over little t. So let's set it up. Again, you have sine 63 over 13. But now angle T is 66. So sine 66 over little t. Go ahead and cross multiply and solve that for baby t. So when I cross multiply, I have t sine 63 equals 13 sine 66. Divide both sides by the sine of 63. So 13 sine of 66 over the sine of 63. And I got 13.329. Anybody else get 13.329? And that's the law of sines. That's it. Again, if you're using it though, you have to know one pair. You have to know an angle and a side. Wednesday we'll start law of cosines. That's different. Alrighty. Let's move on to the next one. Now we got triangle ABC. A, B, C. Big A is 35. Big B is 15. And little c is 5. So right now, we don't have a pair. I need to know, in order for me to know this, I need to figure out C. Can I figure out C, though? Can I easily find C? Yes. How do we find C? Triangle sum. So we're going to take 180 minus 35 minus 15. Type that in your calculators. Is that 130? All right. So now we got to find little a and little b. So in order to find little a, I'm going to set it up. Sine of big C over little c equals sine of big A over little a. So let's set that up. Sine of 130 over 5 equals the sine of 35 over A. Anybody else get 3.744 for little a? All right, so now we're going to do little b. Now to find little b, I'm going to use sine of, now I could do sine of big A over little a because we have two different pairs, but I like to stick with what's given. So I'm going to do big C over little c, but you will get the same answer. So sine of big C over little c equals sine of big B over little b. So sine of 130 over 5 equals the sine of 15 over baby b. Okay, go ahead and cross multiply and solve that for baby b. All right, so I got 1.689. I don't remember getting that last period. Is that what you all got? 1.689. Hopefully I didn't do it wrong because I don't remember that answer. We'll see. All right, so now we have found it all. 1.689. Any questions so far about how to do the law signs? So notice the triangles we've done so far. One was acute. This one here will be obtuse. You can still use the law of signs as long as you have a pair. So that would be little b. All right, so now we got 3 word problems and then we'll be finished. Number 3, you got 2 ships. We got ship A and ship B. They're 250 feet apart, but they're both traveling to the same port. Find the distance from the port to each ship. So the first thing I need to know, though, I know that this is 250. I need to find the angle at the port. How do I find the angle at the port? Triangle sum. Go ahead and do it. Take your 180. Oops, thank you. Oh, hi, I'm back here. Thank you so much. Thank you. Robin, this is your pass for 130. All right, so we got 180 minus 39 minus 41. There you go. Go ahead and see what you get for the angle at the port. Evelyn, what you get for the angle at the port? 100. Anybody else get 100? All right. So I'm going to set it up. Now I have a pair. So I'm going to do the angle. So I'm going to do the sine of the port over little p equals, I'm going to find the distance from ship A. I'm not going to write it like that because I think that's confusing. So we're not going to do it like that. So I'm just going to say, so this is my angle. This is my side. So I have a sine of 100 over 250. And that equals, now if I'm trying to find this distance right here, this distance would be, I'm going to call this x. So let's call this side x. And that represents the distance from ship A to the port. So let's go ahead and find the distance from ship A to the port. So that would be, to find x, what am I putting on top? What's the angle opposite of x? Would it be sine of 39 or the sine of 41? 41. Let's go ahead and solve that. This is ship A distance. So you go ahead and cross multiply it. And try not to forget units, which that should not be feet, but we'll go with feet. But when it's, we usually call it, the unit of measure for land would be knots, but we'll keep that. All right, who got that for ship, the distance from ship A to the port? All right, good. So now I'm going to call this side over here Y. Let's go ahead and find the distance from ship B to the port. Ship B to port. So I'm going to still start it off with the sine of 100 over 250. But now I'm going to use the sine of 39 over Y. All right, go ahead and solve that for Y. All right, that's what I got. I got 159.757. Anybody else get that? 159.757. So we didn't answer the question though. 159.757. Whenever you're taking the test, all right, always make sure we answer the question. So I'm going to go back. It said, find the distance from the port to each ship. And then it also asks us to figure out what ship is closest to the port. So what's the answer to that question? Which one is closer? Ship A or ship B? So we need to write that down. Ship B is closer. You always, always, always ensure you are answering the question. Okay, 2 more. Let's go ahead and get started with the next one. All right, we got Tamara. I'm going to read the question and then we will draw it out. We already know it's going to be a triangle though, right? We can agree with that. We're going to definitely draw a triangle. All right, so it says Tamara leaves her apartment and drives 6.8 miles to meet her friend Gary. Then from Gary's house, they take a road that forms 132 degrees with the angle with the road that they were on to drive to get ice cream. And then from the ice cream shop, they take another road that leads back to Tamara's house that forms a 28-degree angle with the road that they were on. They want us to figure out how far did they drive from Gary to get ice cream. So that's the first question. And then they also want us to figure out how far from the ice cream shop to Tamara. So the first question that we're going to answer is Gary to ice cream. I'm going to just abbreviate that. And then my second one is ice cream to Tamara's. All right, let's draw it out. So we got our triangle. I'm going to say Tamara's house is right here. The first place she went was to Gary's house. She drove 6.8 miles to get there. So this is the road that they were driving on. And then they took this road to get the ice cream. So it says the road that they so they take a road that forms 132 degrees with the road that they were driving on. So this would be 132. Because first they were driving this way, and then they took a turn. Of course, this is not drawn to scale because every time I draw an acute triangle, but this is an obtuse triangle. So truly, we should draw something closer to this. But I just make it simple and keep it the same triangle every time. But that's 132 degrees. All right. So then they take that street to get ice cream. Now from the ice cream shop, so this is ice cream down here. This is the ice cream. It says from that road, they take to Tamara's house. So from these two streets here, so this street and this street forms a 28-degree angle. And they want us to find Gary to ice cream. So I'm going to call this X. So this will be X. And then they also want us to find ice cream to Tamara. So this will be Y. Do we have a pair? Do I know an angle and an opposite side? All right. So we got sine of 28 over 6.8 equals. Now you need to find Tamara, we need to find her angle. So let's go ahead and find this angle right here. We should have probably did that first. Pick up your calculators and take 180 minus 32 minus 28. Did you get 20? 20 degrees? Is that what y'all got? Yep. All right. So 20 goes right here. All right. So now to find X, I'm going to take the sine of 20 over X. I'm going to set up both your ratios and then you can solve them both. And then to find the other one, it would be sine of 28 over 6.8. Except that's going to equal sine of 132 over Y. All right, go ahead and solve both of those. So this is Gary to ice cream. And this one would be ice cream to Tamara. All right, go ahead and cross multiply and find both of those. That's my proportions. So let's look at this one first. So I cross multiplied this direction. I didn't show my work, but I took 6.8 times sine of 20 and then divided that by the sine of 28. So I got 4.954 for Gary to the ice cream. Anybody else get that? All right, good. Let me write that over here. 4.954. What is it? Miles? What's our unit of measure? Miles. Okay. And then from the ice cream shop to Tamara, I got 10.746 miles. Anybody else get that? All right, one more question and then we are done. Last one. All right, we got two cars. They both started at point E. So point E is right here. Then they separate simultaneously to form a 42 degree angle. So from this point, they both separate. And the angle that they form is 42 degrees. From the starting point E to R, so from E to R is 238 yards. And then it says, wait, sorry, let me go back. Take that back, y'all. My bad, let me read it. It says, so from the starting point E, car R is 238. And car T is 241. And the distance between R and T is 172. And they want us to find the measure of the angle opposite from the starting point E to T. So E to T, what's the measure of the angle opposite the distance from E to T? So opposite from the distance of E to T. So from E to T is right here. What angle is opposite ET? R. That's what they want us to find. So let's set it up. We have a pair. This is the pair we know. So we're going to set it up. So we got the sine of big E over 172. And since I'm trying to find this angle, I'm going to use sine of big R over what? 241 or 238? What side is opposite of big R? 241. All right, let's cross multiply. So if I go this direction, that would be 241 times the sine of 42 equals, and then if I go this direction, 172 sine of R. Uh-oh, screen is trying to freeze. We're going to divide both sides by 172. There we go. Which is going to give me 241 sine of 42 over 172 equals the sine of R. Now, I don't know if you remember this from before spring break, but anytime you're trying to find an angle, because angles are inside, what did I tell you you have to use? Inverse. So we're going to do an inverse sine. So what you need to type in your calculator to get R, big R, is going to be the inverse sine of 241 sine 42 over 172. So you have to hit the green button first, and then you have to hit sign in order to get an inverse.